Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us for TAASA Talks, the 87th. I am honored to tag team this effort with TAASA's senior policy advisors, Kristen Lanau and Catherine Stramberg. They are our in-house experts on all things TAASA Ledge. And also very honored to have our special guest, Shannon Gangerty. She is TAASA's policy consultant and actually has been like the instrumental person in all the success that we've had with our SAPCS funding last legislative session. And she's also working really hard with all of us to get our funding right for this legislative session. Hi, everybody. I'm glad y'all are here. But before we get started, I just wanted to kind of say a few words and to hold some space, y'all, for the tremendously difficult week that all of us have had in Texas. There were various levels of distress. Some folks never lost power and had varied access to water, while others had no power and no water. But collectively, as a state, it was a struggle. All of us together were struggling. We had structural calamities with pipes bursting, walls and ceilings were literally crashing down. This happened in our personal lives, and also it happened at rape crisis centers and domestic violence shelters across the state. So you had leaders on the ground trying to get their clients over to hotels while everyone else was trying to find shelter at a hotel. It was a surreal, scary experience. But lastly, the emotional and the mental toll that this had on all of us here in Texas. Some experienced trauma for the first time in the uncertainty, being isolated, being cold, no water, scarce food, having your children there, just not knowing what's going to happen next and when everything's going to be back to normal. And some who have been living with trauma from past experiences, like sexual assault survivors, who have been managing the trauma from their assaults on top of, let's just not forget COVID and all the compounding effects that that's brought on, in addition to being triggered by the elements I just mentioned above. It really does speak to the importance of rape crisis centers being available for survivors, for them to process through and manage all of this compounding trauma. It is vitally consequential in how we are able to respond to those survivors who come forward for help. We know that right now we have wait lists, so funding is vital. And then when we add the complex trauma, we just need to ensure that all this is happening. So we're going to work very hard and keep plugging away to make sure that Rape Crisis Center funding is solid. So now what I'd like to do is to kind of hand it over to Kristen and Catherine. We'll start with Kristen. If you have any thoughts on experiences and what you've heard around the state.
Sure. Thanks, Rose. You already kind of touched on this, but we are hearing from survivors, sexual assault survivors, that this experience has been incredibly triggering and re-traumatizing for them. One that stands out this week was from a human trafficking survivor who said that the darkness, the isolation, the inability to leave was really reminiscent of her time as a victim and just paralyzed her with re-traumatization. And so those are the kinds of issues that we're hearing about.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Catherine, go ahead.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think we've been hearing that from across the state. Just to echo something that Rose touched on, I know a lot of us lost power and water. My kitchen pipes exploded. But that's been happening in shelters across the state. We're seeing really upsetting photos from centers as close to home as Safe Alliance here in Austin and Texas Women's Center, where pipes in the ceiling have just totally exploded, and they're going to need thousands and thousands of dollars worth of repairs in order to serve sexual assault survivors with counseling services and to house family violence survivors. As you said, a lot of those folks got transferred to hotels temporarily, but we're going to see a lot of shelters across the state really need some funds to get everything restored so that survivors can go back into those facilities to get the care and healing support they need.
And Shannon, I don't know if you want to add to that, and also if you have any updates with finance. And I know in addition to that, we were going to talk about what does this mean? What are the implications for Ledge as a whole? But before we get there, do you have any other thoughts to add to that, and even some of the funding ramifications or updates?
Sure. Well, one of the interesting dynamics, I too lost power, as I'm sure most people watching this did. But one of the most interesting aspects of just this as a natural disaster for the state of Texas is this is really truly the only natural disaster I can recall where every single county in the state was affected. And so, unlike Hurricane Harvey, where your coastal senators and representatives were really impacted and this became their top focus, every member was affected. Many members themselves lost power and lost water. And you heard their frustration this week as we've started to have some hearings in their own personal lives. So, what's a better motivator than your own personal story? So I think you will see that translate into action as soon as it happened, especially during the week that it did happen. It was really all that anyone could think about or talk about. And there was this concern, I think, for a lot of folks that this would suck up all of the air out of the room in terms of what the legislature is going to focus on. And for sure, it has done that to some extent. We started back, hearings were canceled all last week. I think we started on Monday. I think that's the day. Days all run together, but I think we started again on Monday. And of course, Senate Finance, in their very first hearing post the disaster, had the head of emergency management come and testify and talk about damages and what that's going to look like from a budget perspective. He talked about, some of the damages. Luckily, home damage, that sort of thing, is going to be reimbursed at a 75% rate from FEMA. So hopefully that will cover a lot of those costs. But as soon as he finished his testimony and the questions were asked, they moved on to the topic that was on the agenda for that day, which was public education. And the members were engaged on that issue. They asked a bunch of questions. And so I think that's a good sign for rape crisis centers and for our issues that, yes, this is going to be consuming. This is going to be an issue that leadership at least talks about all the time. Dan Patrick, the lieutenant governor, came out with his priorities as his top priority. Abbott had a press conference yesterday. This was the theme of the press conference. But there are really certain members on the Senate and the House side that are tasked with looking at the budget for our area, and they're going to continue to be tasked to do that. And it's going to kind of, as the days go by, that will be that focus will continue.
Awesome. I think if the Senate Finance Committee hearing that I heard, was it last week or the week before? Gosh, I'm sorry.
The week before.
Oh, that's right. We have the winter week, but the week before the winter week, if that's any indication in how they're going to operate, I was just very impressed and pleased with how they handled the questions, the way that they asked questions of everybody who came before them. It just made me feel that they are going to focus on the issue at hand. I felt like the Senate Finance Committee and those in leadership, Senator Jane Nelson being one of them, and Huffman, that they did ask questions and uttered the words rape crisis center. So that I felt like that put us in a really good position. So I'm glad to hear that things will, although they are going to address what's happened last week, that it's business as usual. They still do have to pass that budget. So I'm very happy to hear that. And I know, Shannon, that next week is House Appropriations, and I know that they're going to go through the same process. Can you explain to us a little bit what needs to happen at the House and then what needs to happen together when it comes to the base budget and in particular rape crisis center funding?
Yes, absolutely. And I will mention, Rose did not mention this, but she spent all day waiting at the Texas Legislature a week before last to provide that presentation and that information to the Senate Finance Committee. So very much appreciate that. And that's our opportunity, really. It's much more difficult this session to get in front of the members because with COVID, offices are closed. You don't really run into the members in the hallway like you used to and make your pitch. And so those hearings become very important. And the next week, so today is Thursday, on next Monday, the House Appropriations is similar to what happened on the Senate side, will hold their hearings. They do it a little bit differently than the Senate. The full Senate, 15 members, will sit through all the testimony. On the House side, they break into groups first. And so it'll be a much smaller group that Rose is going to be testifying in front of, and we may also have some other folks come from rape crisis centers out into the community to tell our story. And we've provided it's like a 3 to 4 page document at this point that really lays out what we do, how we do it, and then our funding requests. And we're asking obviously to maintain our funding, and then we are asking for a bit of an increase to continue to address wait lists, and we've explained the impact of COVID and what that looks like. So we will do that next week. Or I shouldn't say we, Rose, you will do that next week. I'll cheer you on. And then we'll continue to work with the members that are kind of tasked in each chamber with writing this budget. So we'll continue those efforts. It really helps to have the local rape crisis centers partnering with us as we work with members. When you're the constituent, that makes a big difference. So, well, I know Rose and Kristen and Catherine will continue to reach out to folks that we can try to make those connections with.
I just want to give a quick shout out to Amy Jones from the Dallas Area Rape Crisis Center and to Wendy Hanna from the Turning Point in Plano. They were really great. We had a call with Representative Holland's Chief of Staff, and he was wonderful. He listened to us ask questions, and we were able to tell the compelling story that all of our rape crisis centers have to tell. But we did that this morning. Is very, very happy and very thankful to them. So I just want to kind of put that out there. So if you are a rape crisis center and you're a sexual assault program and you're watching this, we may be calling on you to do these things. Very great way to kind of convey the reality for sexual assault survivors on the ground and the work that you do to talk about how important that is. Okay, is there anything else, Shannon or Kristen or Catherine, that you all want to add before we wrap things up? All right, well, we'll keep you posted. So thank you all again for tuning in. We just thought it was important to kind of do a really quick kind of, hold space for here's what happened last week. We were all in it together. And what did that mean for the Ledge? We know now that they are going to have some focus on that, but that we have nothing to worry about. We're going to continue plugging away at issues that are important for sexual assault survivors and those who serve them. And again, if you have any questions in between now and then in the emails, email policy@taasa.org and the team will get back with you as soon as possible. But until then, y'all stay safe and we'll see you next time. Thank y'all.
Thank you.